And welcome. This is Peter Winnick. I'm the founder and CEO of Thought Leadership Leverage, and you're joining us on the podcast today, which is Leveraging Thought Leadership. I'm excited to speak to our guest today, which is Jeff Hayzlett. I'll give you Jeff's quick bio so we can dive right in. So Jeff is a primetime television host of C-Suite with Jeffrey Hayzlett and Executive Perspectives on C-Suite TV. He also hosts a business podcast called All Business with Jeffrey Hayzlett on C-Suite Radio. He's the chairman of C-Suite Network. He's written multiple books, including The Mirror Test, The Hero Factor. He's a world-renowned speaker and a leading business expert in places like Forbes, Success, CEO Magazine, etc. So welcome aboard, Jeff. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
So I'm just going to dive right in because you've got a fairly interesting perspective given all the things that you've got going on. So let's talk about the things that you're seeing, not just for yourself, but others do based on your work that is working in terms of helping people get their content and thought leadership out to more people to have more impact and in the instances where it's relevant, make more money.
Yeah, I think the biggest, I just actually spoke of this at the National Speakers Association, talking about how we built a multi-million-dollar brand using content and thought leadership and creating the C-Suite network and all the entities that we have there, C-Suite Radio, C-Suite TV, C-Suite Book Club, C-Suite Academy, C-Suite Network Advisors, we have them all. And, the two biggest things I think people are starting to realize the need to build their own communities. That's one, beyond just the traditional kind of email base and beyond just the social media, because we all know that we can build up hundreds of thousands of followers, but it's the engagement, and the engagement comes around the content. And the content's so critical for you to be able to not only just create, but then place it to where people are at, step and repeat it,
Yep.
and then utilize it very effectively. So that's, and then also, one other thing, Peter, I think it's really cool to do, especially a lot of our podcasters realize, and we have about 120 shows on C-Suite Radio. But one of the biggest things is, people used to worry about their downloads. I said, shut up and quit worrying about your downloads, and worry more about who you have on the podcast, and that you can utilize, your interviews to get to the people you want to do business with.
Yeah, well, I think that's, oftentimes I want to jump on that for a second. Someone will say, well, I'm going to do a podcast. And I'm like, well, why? And it's like, well, everybody's doing one. So it's, our mothers used to say, well, if everyone jumped off the roof, right? So what are your, if you're making an investment of your time and energy, and with podcasting, money's probably a little bit of a lesser extent, what's the outcome? What are you looking to do? So you're either going to build your brand.
Peter, that's the key question. What is it you want to be when you grow up? And then what is it, what's the end in mind? Just to do a podcast, is it for fame or is it for fortune? That's the first question you should ask.
Yep, totally.
And then beyond that, then start figuring out, well, certainly if it's for fortune, I always tell people go for fortune, because if you make good money and you do it well, people recognize that you'll get the fame for free. If not, you'll have enough money to buy it. So, so as a thought leader, which a lot of people do, there's still a lot of people out there that do that. They do that with the New York Times list. They'll buy it. They'll,
Yep.
In terms of being a bestseller and so forth. There's a lot of folks that will do that. I wouldn't advocate that, but really to begin with the end in mind, and the end in mind should be to grow your business and to grow your reach, grow your influence. And so, if those are the key things, then what's the best way to go about it?
Yeah, no, totally agree. So, you mentioned community and you mentioned content, and then you talked about the downloads. So I wanted to just touch on the downloads, where I think one of the points that you were making there is metrics are important, but they shouldn't be stupid ones. And oftentimes I see, and I'd love to get your take on this, in social, oh, I got, so many likes or retweets or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, what does that metric really mean? Is that an ego metric or a business metric? So can you comment on that?
Yeah, I think that's a real key thing. We measure, obviously I want to know how many followers I've gained this week, how many I've lost, what's my net, raise. But, I also want to know about the engagement. But more importantly, I want to know, if I send this tweet, if I do this thing, what will be the result?
Mm-hmm.
And what is it I'm trying to drive? I mean, I recently posted an Instagram gal who has 2 million followers, maybe 20 million followers. I don't know. And she tried to get people to buy T-shirts, and no one bought them.
Mm-hmm.
So she was an influencer, an Instagram influencer. Really? Seriously? You can't get two people to buy a T-shirt, and you have millions of followers? I guess you're not much of an influencer. You're a de-influencer, quite frankly.
Right.
So, so you have to really look at the metrics of what you were trying to buy. Let give you a good example. On my own podcast, All Business with Jeffrey Hayzlett on C-Suite Radio, I have the ability to see where the downloads are at, where people are downloading. I have it open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I started to watch the second largest country or area, region outside of North America, because I kind of include Canada and the US in the same bucket.
Sure.
It was India. India.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you about your business then? What do you do with that
Well,
information?
one, I need to start targeting more speeches there. Two, I need to target more potential board involvement. But more importantly, I need to change some of the things I say to be more reflective of the population, to be more, considerate. So I used to say things like, hey, I'm going to go after the show, going out for big steak. Well, probably not the coolest thing to do, with Hindus. So I calm that down a little bit. But at the same time, you can't lose your identity, right? Because I have a huge Jewish following, but I still make fun about how much bacon I eat.
Right.
And we play that up with the tribe, so to speak. And so
Yep.
there's ways that you can do it, but it shows you that the metrics can help you in terms of being influential and then driving the things that you want to do.
No, I love that. So I want to talk about some of the, let's call them the new rules of content from a cadence perspective. So if you go back to the ancient days of, let's say, 15 years ago, there was an unwritten rule in publishing that a typical business author would come out with a new book every 18 months, right? And
Yeah.
then there's various cadences and various modalities and formats, and it changes all the time. Could you comment on whether you align with that, whether you disagree with that? Because I know you're fairly humble and it's hard to get you out of your shell.
Well, I appreciate that. At least I'm transparent and and understand the value of what I do and how I do it. I actually try to stick to a 12, 18-month schedule where we're activating, and primarily because you mentioned right off the bat, Peter, is I do a lot of keynote speaking.
Yep.
So when I speak 150 times a year, 160 times a year, and I average 27,500 or something, that's some good money. And
Yep.
so, but I want to go back to the audiences that I've done a really good job for. I can't go back with the same speech 2 years later.
Yep.
So I've got to have some new content, even though my core theme is the same. It's about driving change and overcome adversities, and killing the captains of no in organizations.
Sure.
And so I do like that. I might jump in there with a different show or something new that we might add. But pretty much, yeah, if I could show you, I actually did this with a slide, yesterday, and showing people here's my cadence of what we've done. And the only thing we speeded it up with was the addition of a TV show.
Yep.
But the books, yeah, have been pretty steady every 18 months.
Cool. So let's drill into speaking for a little bit, because from your perspective, from what I'm hearing, is the reason to make the investment of time and energy and effort into the book is it's in essence a quote new speech, right? Because there's a weirdness in the speaking business where in most businesses the reward for doing a killer job for your customer, for your client, is they will bring you back. In the keynote space is, well, if I already heard what you have to say, not going to bring you back again next year. I'm going to, and maybe the theme changes or whatever of the event. Those laws don't apply. So I love what you're doing there, is using the book as a forcing mechanism to say Hayzlett comes in a new flavor this year, talking about something different, even though thematically it might be the same. Let's dive into sort of the nuts and bolts of speaking. I know you just came from NSA event. That business has changed a lot. So talk about the business side of the business, where the bookings are now moving, majority of bookings are being done directly by the speakers versus the bureaus, and things that you're seeing that are working for folks. Because people struggle,
Yeah.
people that are great speakers struggle with the business side of it, obviously.
Yeah, well, it's not an easy business. I mean, the average speaker, makes about 150 grand, professional speaker, and I know that we're in the top 0.5% in the world in terms of the public speaking side of it. But, the business of the business is a tough one. It's changed. We still do about 35% through bureaus. All those, the other 65% is us direct. And we get that ability, primarily, one, just out of necessity. We can do a better job. Bureaus, I love bureaus, but they're working for the client, not necessarily me.
Well, but drill on that for a minute.
Yeah.
So go deeper on that, because I think a lot of speakers are delusional and think the bureau represents me. It's like, no, they have a fiduciary responsibility to their client, and you're just a commodity. So can you talk about that? Because I think just the basic understanding of the relationship.
Yeah, if the client says they want to go with someone else, they're going to go with someone else,
Yep.
regardless of whether they're with you. They're there to sell and facilitate and serve the client. So, there are some managed relationships with some bureaus or some agents,
Sure.
but that's a few and far between. And most speakers aren't even going to be qualified to speak for a bureau because they don't make enough. It's not worth enough for the bureau to do it because the bureau is taking anywhere from 25 to 35% of the fee, and then sometimes are also getting paid by the actual entity itself on top of it. Sometimes, not always, but they're there representing the client. So typically, the client will say, let's say the organization or association or corporation. I mostly speak at mostly corporations, but
Yep.
they will say, hey, we're interested in this kind of speaker, and they'll go into their roster and they'll look up those 25 to
Yep.
50, and then they'll submit them. And they might say these three top ones are the ones I really look at, and then they look at your videos, they drill them down, and they'll look at a couple of your videos, and they might even call you. Sometimes I've had
Sure.
numerous calls with clients or the bureaus, so you want to help the bureau. I want to be as easy for the bureau to book and utilize me. I want them to allow them to put hold dates on my.
But let's talk about the easiness. So I want to talk about the easiness because it seems if we change the word speaker to any other business, that wouldn't even be in discussion, right? But for some reason, there's this prima donna factor on the speaking side that people don't talk about where it's like, wait a minute, you're getting paid a boatload of money for an hour of your time. And how dare you have these ridiculous demands of, the size of your hotel room and you only want a black car service, not an Uber and all this sort of stuff when you're actually an employee or of service to the client. It's just so anti-client behavior, but it's rampant.
Well, it's stupid, Peter. I
Yeah.
mean, I I always tell especially if I get on the phone with them ahead of time, because I do a lot of calls ahead of
Sure.
time. Because in a big corporate setting, the last thing we want to do is the person picking the speaker make a mistake in the CEO's
Yep.
chair.
Of
I
course.
mean, it's just not cool. So I always tell them I'm going to be the least of your
Yep.
worries. You have enough problems going on with putting the event together. I will come in early. I will be there. Yeah, I will do sound checks. If you want them. I hate sound checks. They're not for me. They're really for the people, not for
Yep.
me, because I don't care. I'm going to walk on the stage whether the lights are on or not, and I'll do what I have to do. But most of the time, I find that most speakers are a pain in the ass. They
Yeah.
they they rush in at the last minute, throwing their thumb drive down at this tech staff, and I don't do that. I show up, well, but the morning before at 6 a.m. or because I'm usually an opening or closing,
Sure.
or the break before, or the noon meeting before. Giving them plenty of time, making sure everything's cool, that they're happy, everything's good.
Let's talk about systems and processes because what I find is the business side of speaking, be it what it may, is fairly transactional. Are you available on this date? Yes or no.
Yeah,
Can you
yeah.
afford my fee? Yes or no. Does the theme fit? So that's a transaction. It is what it is. However, most speakers, most thought leaders, if you're smart, you want to use that as the beginning
Yeah.
of a longer term relationship. So you've got to have systems and processes in place. And it blows my mind when they roll in an hour early and they're off stage, 20 minutes after their stage, they're jumping in the car and getting out of there. That's not how you build a relationship, right? How do you not get there the night before and say to them, listen, as long as I'm in Denver or wherever I am for your event, what else can you use me for? Do you have some customers you want me to have breakfast with? Do you have,
Yeah.
your high potentials? I can do a little round table. What can you do to give them value, assuming it's not going to turn one day into two or something like that? There's so few speakers that come from that mindset, and those that do are killing it.
Well, you said it. I mean, I'll come in like I always try to put another flight between me and harm's way, so
Yep.
there's always a backup. So I usually get in the night before, and there's plenty of time for dinner. And I say, well, do you have a VIP dinner that you're taking your
Yep.
top customers to? And they say yes. Would you like me to join it? I have to have dinner anyway, and I'd be more than happy. And then usually I become the entertainment for that dinner,
Yep.
and
Yep.
which is fine, no problem. And in fact, sometimes I'll say, well, how many people you got coming? Oh, you have 22. Great. Would you mind if I bring 22 books and I'll sign them for each of your guests?
Sure.
And of course, what's that do for me? Well, most of those people that are coming to that event are big customers. They're usually officers of their customers. They're officers of a company. I usually pick a gig or two about that thing. I'm not stupid. And, that's a great way to be able to do those kind of things. And, I even say, hey, look, the theme of my book is, or the title
Yep.
of my book is, would you like to use that for your theme?
Sure.
Would you like the artwork? Would you like me to cut a video promo to send out to your guest? Would you like me to would you like a promo or a little thank you afterwards to send to all of your attendees? What is it that I can do? Let me. What's the theme for your event? Who's speaking before me? Who's speaking after me? Oh my gosh, you mean your CEO is following me? Listen, let me talk to you about this. Probably not the best career move for you. Okay, and I have that discussion with them. I'm going, you don't want your CEO following me.
Yep.
Because
Yep.
I'm a really good speaker. I'm a Hall of Fame speaker. I will crush him or her,
Yep.
and it won't be good. So so we talk about those kinds of things, and they're very appreciative of it.
I love it. So let's, as we start to run out of time, unfortunately, give me a couple of things that you see in your work and your work with other authors and thought leaders and speakers and such, things that used to be no brainers that used to work that don't work anymore, and things that are a little bit more cutting edge and new that people are starting to experiment with and getting
Yeah,
great results.
that's a great thing. Emails don't work like they used to.
Yeah.
Newsletters don't work like they used to, right? You
Yep.
can still get some of those things if you got a relationship, but the problem with all the filters and the engagement models that Google puts in or whoever, you can't even get through the servers,
Yep.
So that's one that's doing it. We utilize. I'm using video and video mailers.
Okay. Tell me
So,
about that.
yeah, I'm using a tool called BombBomb. It's a really cool little tool, and I'm constantly cutting BombBombs and sending those out as video links to people saying, "Hey, I'm going to be in such and such place. Do you have an event for me, or is there something I can do for you? I just heard this. Congratulations on this, or whatever." And then we do a video mailer where we use a company called You Via Us that actually does a video mailer for us that I actually record a video and we talk about the upcoming theme of the speech this year and we get it out to literally thousands and thousands. And many times I'll see that meeting planner or that
Yeah.
CEO or head of, whoever head of the meeting a year later and that's still sitting on their desk, you
That's
know.
great. And any other nuggets to share? Because I know we could go on for hours,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
we do. We also use Call Logic, which is a tool that auto dials for us. And so when we're really trying to get through to people, it will auto dial, and if they're not there, it will leave a voicemail from me.
Cool.
And so we'll do a voice like, "Hey, this is Jeff Hayzlett. I'm on the set of the TV show, but I've just wanted to take a break because your event is one of the biggest events I've been wanting to do for a long time. And I'm sorry I missed you, but if you could call back my business manager, happens to be Tyler Hayzlett, and you
Yep.
can reach him at this number. I really love to be able to talk to you. He'll find me on set, and we'll get a chance to talk, and let's talk about your next big event. So we do that.
Sure.
So we can, those are little tiny tools that we use. And one other tool that I really love is called Witty Parrot. Somebody check it out, folks. It's a great way to be able to put formatted letters that you would normally clip and paste out of your draft,
Right.
box. And this sits over on the right-hand side of my computer, and I can do like 100 letters an hour, just dropping and clip and paste, and you just drag and drop. And so
Yep.
I've got all kinds of different paragraphs or full letters that I can just jump in there with.
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate your time, Jeff, and I thank you for all that you've shared. It seems like you and I share a lot of the beliefs and seeing a lot of things, but I love the service mentality and the thoughtfulness and the strategicness that you put into everything that you do. So thank you for sharing it with us today.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks so much. And the biggest thing, Peter, one last thing is a bonus. Do it. Just do it yourself. Make it happen. Do it.
Yep. Love it. Thanks, man. Good talking to you.
Cheers.
To learn more about Thought Leadership Leverage, please visit our website at thoughtleadershipleverage.com. To reach me directly, feel free to email me at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And please subscribe to Leveraging Thought Leadership on iTunes or your favorite podcast app to get your weekly episode automatically.